Your value is internal, not negotiated. It is not a currency to be traded, nor a price tag to be adjusted based on how someone else sees you. It is not defined by a compliment, a proposal, a text message, or the silence that follows. It is a truth written within your being before you ever learned how to doubt it. You are not valuable because someone chooses you. You are valuable because you exist. The problem begins when you forget this truth and start to measure your worth by someone else's response. You begin to interpret their attention as approval, their affection as confirmation, their distance as rejection. But these are illusions. They are reflections of another person's capacity, not your value. When you hand over the responsibility of defining your worth to another human being, you place yourself in a constant emotional negotiation, waiting for someone else to tell you that you are enough. The moment you start seeking validation from a man, you unconsciously give him the authority to determine your emotional climate. If he calls, you feel good. If he ignores you, you feel small. If he chooses someone else, you question your reflection. This is not love, this is bondage disguised as connection. True value is quiet, it is rooted, it doesn't shout to be seen. It doesn't beg to be chosen. It knows that being chosen by someone else cannot add to it, and being rejected cannot subtract from it. When you truly understand your internal value, you stop performing, you stop shrinking, you stop dressing your soul in desperation. You begin to walk in the awareness that your worth is not up for debate. There is a reason people who know their value move differently. They don't chase, they don't settle, they don't plead, they stand. They attract from a place of abundance, not lack. They understand that love is not something you earn by proving your usefulness. It is something you experience when two whole beings meet. The moment you forget that, you start to negotiate. You lower your standards for attention. You silence your voice to maintain peace. You accept crumbs and call it a meal. You try to mold yourself into what you think he wants, not realizing that every time you abandon yourself to keep someone else, you are teaching your spirit to settle for less than it deserves. When your value is internal, your decisions change. You stop saying yes to things that insult your spirit. You stop trying to fix people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop explaining why you deserve love, because you know that love that needs an explanation is not love. You begin to move with quiet confidence. You begin to carry yourself with dignity. You begin to make peace with solitude because you understand that loneliness is not the absence of people, but the absence of self-connection. When you know your worth, being alone is not punishment, it's preparation. It's the sacred space where you build the foundation of who you are, so that no man can walk into your life and dismantle it with inconsistency. Many women lose their power because they confuse attention with affection, and affection with validation. But attention is fleeting, affection can be conditional, and validation can be manipulated. Value, on the other hand, is unshakable. It doesn't depend on how someone feels about you today or tomorrow. It's an awareness that lives deep within your being, whispering that you are enough even when the world is silent. It tells you that rejection is redirection, not reflection. It reminds you that being unseen by the wrong eyes does not make you invisible. You must learn to sit with yourself until you recognize that your presence is a privilege. You must nurture your mind, feed your soul, and protect your peace like sacred ground. The more you invest in your growth, the more you realize that your value has nothing to do with what you look like or what you offer someone else, but everything to do with who you are becoming. You cannot build your identity around someone else's perception and expect to feel stable. You cannot anchor your worth in another person's approval and expect to feel free. You must know, deep in your bones, that you are worthy of love, respect, and reciprocity, not because someone says so, but because you are. The shift happens when you stop asking, "What do I need to do for him to see my value?" and start declaring, "I see my value whether he does or not." That shift is power. That awareness transforms your energy. You no longer show up from a place of fear or scarcity. You show up as someone who knows she brings light to any room she walks into. You stop auditioning for roles that require you to forget yourself. You stop bending over backward to prove your worth to people who are blind to it. You begin to move in alignment with your truth, and that truth attracts what is meant for you. When you know your internal value, you become unshakable. You stop trying to be chosen because you already chose yourself. What you tolerate, you teach. Every time you allow something in your life that goes against your spirit, you are silently giving a lesson to the people around you about how they are permitted to treat you. You may think silence keeps the peace, but silence often becomes a permission slip for disrespect. When you ignore the sting of a hurtful word, excuse the absence of effort, or justify behavior that leaves you uneasy, you are not keeping harmony. You are teaching someone that your boundaries are flexible, that your standards are negotiable, that your worth can be bargained down. What you tolerate does not just affect one moment, it shapes the entire rhythm of a relationship. It sets the tone, it draws the lines, and it defines the language of respect or the lack of it. People learn from patterns, not promises. You can say you want love built on respect, but if your actions show that you will accept inconsistency, neglect, or manipulation, the message you send is louder than your words. You are the instructor of your own treatment. Every boundary you enforce becomes a declaration of self-respect. Every act of forgiveness without accountability becomes a lesson in leniency. And every moment you ignore your intuition to avoid conflict, you are teaching others that your comfort is less important than their convenience. The truth is, boundaries are not barriers. They are bridges that show others how to meet you in a space of honor. They protect your energy, your peace, and your dignity. Without them, you become vulnerable to the erosion of your self-worth. When you tolerate being an option, you lose the position of being a priority. When you allow someone to speak to you in a way that diminishes your light, you are teaching them that your spirit can be dimmed. When you accept constant apologies with no change, you are teaching them that your forgiveness has no backbone. It's not cruelty to draw a line, it's clarity. It's not harshness to walk away, it's healing. You are not responsible for teaching a man how to be a man, but you are responsible for showing him what will and will not be allowed in your presence. The love you want will never exist in the space where you tolerate disrespect, because love cannot flourish where your value is compromised. So many people stay silent out of fear, fear of being alone, fear of being misunderstood, fear of losing what they hope will change. But what you fail to confront will continue to grow. Disrespect does not shrink with time. It multiplies with tolerance. Every time you let a boundary slide, every time you swallow your truth, you chip away at your own voice. You start to question your worthiness of better. You begin to confuse patience with passivity. But love without boundaries becomes suffering disguised as sacrifice. You cannot teach someone to honor you while you are dishonoring yourself by accepting less than you deserve. The moment you decide that your peace matters more than pleasing others, you begin to retrain the world around you. You start to move differently. You no longer justify why something feels wrong. You trust that it does. You no longer chase closure, you create it. You no longer beg for understanding, you embody it. The standards you set become a mirror reflecting how you see yourself. When you raise your standards, you don't lose people who are meant for you. You lose the ones who benefited from your silence. You cannot elevate your life while entertaining what diminishes you. What you tolerate in the beginning will define the relationship in the end. If you allow inconsistency, it will become the rhythm. If you accept excuses, they will become the language. If you welcome half-love, it will become the standard. And the longer you stay in that space, the harder it becomes to believe that something greater exists. You start adapting to crumbs, forgetting that you once desired the feast, but the universe mirrors your energy. When you settle, it sends more of what matches that frequency. When you stand firm in your worth, it aligns you with those who recognize it without being taught. Every moment is a lesson, not just for others, but for yourself. When you hold the line, you remind your spirit that it is sacred. When you enforce your boundaries, you rebuild trust within your soul. You teach yourself that you are not desperate, that your love is not for discount, that your heart is not a training ground for someone else's immaturity. The more you tolerate what drains you, the further you drift from who you truly are. The more you honor your standards, the closer you come to living in alignment with your truth. You cannot build a healthy relationship in a space where your value is constantly negotiated. You cannot find peace where your boundaries are broken. The love that is meant for you will never require you to abandon your voice to keep it. It will recognize your strength and rise to meet it. But it begins with you. It begins with what you allow, what you accept, and what you decide is no longer welcome in your life. Energy reveals everything. You can say all the right words, wear the right clothes, play the right part, but energy cannot lie. It carries the truth of how you see yourself, how you value yourself, and what you truly believe you deserve. You don't attract what you say you want. You attract what your energy agrees with. If your heart whispers unworthiness while your mouth declares confidence, the energy you project will still reflect insecurity. People may not consciously understand it, but they feel it. A man can sense when your worth is rooted or when it's wavering. He can feel if you are standing in your power or if you're reaching for validation. Energy communicates louder than words, and it becomes the silent architect of your relationships. When your energy is rooted in insecurity, you move differently. You chase instead of attract. You settle instead of choose. You cling to moments instead of building connections. You fear silence because silence feels like rejection, and you mistake inconsistency for mystery. You start to interpret mixed signals as a challenge to prove your worth, not as a warning to protect your heart. That energy tells the world that you need someone else to confirm your value. It draws in people who feed on your uncertainty, who thrive in the spaces where you doubt yourself, because as long as you're unsure, they remain in control. But when your energy is anchored in self-worth, everything changes. You no longer seek what already lives within you. You no longer chase love, you become love. You no longer beg for attention. You command respect by your presence alone. You walk into a room not wondering who will notice you, but knowing that you are already enough, whether anyone sees it or not. That kind of energy is magnetic. It attracts people who are aligned with your strength, not your struggle. It repels those who come with games because truth does not entertain confusion. Your energy reveals your beliefs about love, about life, about yourself. If you believe you must earn love through sacrifice, your energy will reflect overgiving and overcompensating. If you believe love is scarce, your energy will carry fear and attachment. But if you believe love flows easily and abundantly, your energy becomes calm, trusting, and open. People respond to that. They feel safe in it. They rise to meet it. You don't have to prove anything when your energy already speaks clarity. Everything begins with the relationship you have with yourself. If your inner world is filled with doubt, chaos, and self-criticism, that vibration seeps into every interaction. You attract people who reflect that same instability back to you. They become mirrors showing you what you have not yet healed. That's why repeating cycles happen, not because the world is cruel, but because energy seeks balance. The lesson continues until the vibration changes. The moment you begin to treat yourself as worthy, the world starts to respond differently. The moment you begin to believe that you are enough without conditions, you stop tolerating energy that drains or devalues you. Your energy is shaped by the stories you tell yourself. If you constantly replay memories of rejection, betrayal, or abandonment, you are programming your vibration to expect more of the same. You start to live in anticipation of pain, and your energy reflects defense instead of openness. Healing changes that frequency. It replaces fear with faith, scarcity with sufficiency, desperation with dignity. When you shift your inner dialogue, your energy begins to tell a new story, one of peace, of confidence, of readiness to receive love that matches your truth. You can't pretend your way to a higher vibration. Affirmations alone won't transform your energy if your beliefs remain unchanged. True shift happens when you start embodying what you desire. When you treat yourself with kindness, when you set boundaries, when you pursue growth, when you honor your intuition, your energy expands. You begin to radiate certainty. You no longer move from lack. You no longer chase after those who are unsure. You become the frequency of stability, and stability attracts stability. Men respond not just to your beauty, but to your energy. A woman who is rooted in self-respect commands a different level of treatment. She doesn't have to explain her standards. Her energy communicates them before she speaks. She doesn't have to demand loyalty. Her presence invites it. She doesn't have to compete for attention. Her confidence creates gravity. You can't manipulate that energy. It's cultivated through self-awareness and growth. It's built in silence, in solitude, in moments of reflection where you confront your fears and replace them with truth. Everything you attract, friendships, opportunities, relationships, is a reflection of your energetic frequency. You cannot live in doubt and attract certainty. You cannot live in chaos and attract peace. You cannot live in fear and attract love. The outer world mirrors the inner one. If you want a man who sees your value, you must first embody it through your energy. You must walk in the awareness that you are already whole, already complete, already worthy. That energy shifts the room before you even speak. It filters what enters your life. It protects you from the counterfeit because truth recognizes truth.